So this weekend I got back from the live-action retelling of Ghost in the Shell starring Scarlett Johansson. Knowing Hollywood's track record for how they treat Japanese media in their adaptations, which is rather abysmal, I might add, I came into this movie with rather low expectations. So after seeing it, the question is if it is worth the hype. So are we finally getting a good adaptation of Japanese media, or is this another Dragon Ball Evolution? First off, much like with my conversations with the producer of Ghost in the Shell, Aria Rod, who I met at Anime Expo last year, the film indeed does borrow elements from both the original animated film and the TV series standalone complex. The film is more of an origin story telling how the Major became a cyborg and how she tries to find out bits and pieces of her past before her cyberization, all the while pursuing a corporate terrorist named Kuze from the Individual 11 storyline in standalone complex Second Gig. First off, the visuals in this movie are really awesome. They actually do the original film's technological world justice. I love the Blade Runner-like atmosphere, and much of the technology leaps straight out of a Philip K. Dick novel. You can tell a lot of care was taken to make this movie as visually impressive and believable as possible. A lot of the doll-like visuals in this movie were really creepy, especially the geisha robots in the beginning of the movie. This technologically advanced futuristic world is absolutely gorgeous to see, and I want to see more of it. I also like the eye candy and nods to both the original film and standalone complex. There were even times where a scene would borrow footage from either of those, shot by shot. A good example is the garbage truck chase and the fight scene from the original film. You can tell the filmmakers cared for the source material, and they put a lot of effort into making the film as faithful to the franchise as possible while telling their own spin on the story. Unfortunately, there are a few things about this movie that hold it back. First thing is that there is a lot of filler in this movie. There were more than a few instances where the movie just stops or slows down in favor of showing off the film's visual prowess. I'll give it a pass since the original film did a lot of this as well, but at times the visuals, while impressive, take away from character development and story. It feels a lot more like the scenery is chewing the actors, when usually it's the other way around. This just proves that impressive visuals alone do not necessarily make a good film without an interesting story or characters to fall back on. Another thing this anime falls flat on is that it is kind of oversimplified. The film follows the lore of the original rather well, with some changes here and there. After all, this is an adaptation. I get that some changes need to be made. Thankfully, at least, they make sense for the most part. However, much of the lore and philosophical elements from the original film and TV show are watered down to make this film more accessible to newcomers. It drops many story elements from the original film for a more simplified story like what differentiates a human being from a machine, inherent individuality, the sanctity of life, what constitutes a living being, and where does life begin, amongst other topics. This makes the story, while somewhat interesting in its own right, feel a little bit shallow when compared to the original film. The other problem is characterization. The bulk of the film follows Major Motoko Kusanagi as she tries to figure out who she is and learn more about her past life before becoming a cyborg. I like how mysterious and enigmatic she becomes at first, and very small snippets about her are revealed as the story goes on. But we really don't learn very much about her until the third act of the movie. This causes her character to become a little underdeveloped. I don't know if this is on purpose to give her character a sense of mystery behind her, but in doing so, she loses a lot of characterization and development in the process. It's more like her character development starts out and develops slowly and gradually until it plateaus for a while in the middle and then finally starts picking up again sometime after the third act begins. It also proves rather frustrating to those who are already familiar with the character. While I agree that it was a definite missed opportunity to cast a Japanese actress for the role of Major Kusanagi, it does make sense that the body that she portrays is a synthetic one, but the film does imply that she was originally a Japanese girl before her cyberization. Scarlett Johansson does a very decent job portraying the character regardless, and she does carry the film along pretty well. Her acting is fairly monotone and shallow, but she does a good job portraying a somewhat emotionless robot-like. She literally is a human brain inside a machine, so it kind of fits. The other members of Section 9 kind of falter as well. A majority of the Major's comrades in arms basically amount to cameos and background characters. The only character within Section 9 that gets nearly any character development is Batou and maybe Chief Daisuke Aramaki. It is a shame because I would like to see more of Togusa, Saito, and plenty of the others. So the live-action Ghost in the Shell was a fun cyberpunk detective story with some nice action pieces thrown in and beautiful visuals and cinematography. It loses much of its philosophical and intellectual prowess from the original movie in favor of this, though. While it shows some intelligence at times, it basically amounts to your typical popcorn action flick. It's enough to stand on its own, but it is more of a supplement to the original film rather than a replacement. I don't know if the movie will become successful enough, but if it does warrant a sequel, I would like to see it adapt the Laughing Man storyline from Standalone Complex. However, the way that critics are responding to this movie and the projected box office results, I don't think that is going to happen. But still, if there is one, I can definitely see room for improvement. But I still enjoyed it, and I wouldn't mind going out to see it again. So if you want to see Japanese media taken more seriously, I think you should go out to see it at least once. Even though I was expecting it to be such, it had some problems in the end, but it is definitely no Dragon Ball Evolution. Go out and see it. It is not as bad as critics claim. So with that, this is a high 6 to a low 7 out of 10 for me. This is the American Anime Otaku, signing out. Like what you see? Then please help support the show by contributing to my Patreon page for special perks, exclusive content, and more.